Alright, Glue Troopers, Max and Max's models here, and we're off. So I got off the Hurricane Hobbies, and luckily they had all the paints I needed for the Phantom. So I stocked up on everything right according to the Tamiya paints that were listed. I was considering the possibility of using the airbrush instead of the rattle cans because Tamiya does say specifically AS16 and AS20, so they expect you to use Tamiya lacquers, but I was thinking about mixing my own paints maybe with acrylic so I could use the airbrush. But the mixes, there's not a direct acrylic to lacquer color to color. The numbers are different and the shades are different. I did find a website that showed you how to mix the same colors. For example, for the Insignia white, you use 2 bottles of white to 1 bottle of buff. But I was thinking, if it doesn't go quite right, or I don't have enough and I have to remix another batch, I could wind up with multiple shades. Just ask my younger brother, who wound up with 7 shades of gray on the bottom of an airplane because he kept having to remix more. So I looked to see if any of the paints were exactly the same. They weren't. The acrylics just don't shade the same as the lacquers. Also, I might add that the two AS16, AS20, the 2 lacquers I'm using, really aren't that far apart because it is a subtle paint job. Well, gray, light gray over white. But I've got the right stuff. So I got home, got it all organized, got ready to get to work. And when I got to the house, had a surprise waiting on me. The Red Fox 3D decals were there. And wow, you guys were right. These things impress. I'm thrilled about using them. I'm treating them like they're made of gold. So I very carefully, you got to be careful because you even open the plastic bag they're in, they start popping off. They're very easy to separate, and they're fairly stiff, but of course they're 3D printed, so they're delicate. So just quietly slid them back in their little pouch and put them in a safe, quiet, out-of-the-way place until I'm going to mount them. So then I got to work on the first part of the build, which was to primer and paint the inside of the intakes. And I used the white primer, and then I used the Insignia white, the AS20. And for a second, when I put the white primer on, I went, that inside, you're not going to be able to see inside, so that's probably good enough. But I was like, nope, no shortcuts. We're doing it all right for the kernel. So I noticed that after I put the AS20 over the white primer, there actually was a significant difference. You can see that the AS20 is actually somewhat darker than the white primer. So anyway, you got that done, got the engine intakes painted with the proper paint, and they look fine. They're going to be way up there. You can hardly see them, but if you look up those intakes with a flashlight on this build, you're going to see the proper shade white intakes with the proper shade of metal fan blades. Now there's something a little on the unusual side that happened today, which shows the Styrene River never takes a day off. I received an email from a Glue Trooper asking about these blisters on top of the intakes of the F4J. And at first I thought it was a refueling boom, but then I realized no, that's much bigger, and it's up above the intake on the right side only. These are on the both sides. So I thought, okay, it's got to be some kind of ECM jamming gear. And that's what we kind of figured, but it was bugging me. So being who I am, down the rabbit hole I went. And boy, did this turn out to be harder to research than I expected, but I did finally figure it out. They are part of a RHAW, radar homing and warning system. And the Tamiya F4J has them on the Colonel's airplane. So I figured, okay, no big deal. We figured out what it was. But then I saw some builds of the Colonel's plane and some artwork and some pictures that didn't have it. So back down a tangent rabbit hole. Kit model research. We all know how it goes. The next thing you know, I'm finding some conflict here. Some have it, some don't. Now, I could ask the Colonel, but the gentleman's 90 years old, and I don't know if he's going to remember an antenna he had on his plane 52 years ago while he was fighting for his life. Bigger fish and all that. But I did find artwork by Mark Styling, and here's his website, markstyling.com. He's an aviation artist, and he's done quite a few of the Shamrocks aircraft, and from different years. His artwork seems to be extremely well researched, and if I've learned anything from our channel friend Mike Machat, is that these artists really research their subjects. So he shows the Colonel's plane, their wingman's plane, and some others. He also shows an F4J that the Colonel had flown earlier in the year. None of them have that RHAW radar. But he shows some Shamrock aircraft from 1975 that do have it. And all the photos I found where the Shamrock's aircraft had that antenna were around 1975 or later. I mean, I couldn't find photos for every year, but none of them that were marked as 1972 had it. So I think Tamiya might possibly have gotten the box wrong, which is nobody's fault. I mean, this is a really obscure thing to research, but I'm going to build the model without it. And I actually emailed Mr. Styling to ask him about this very subject. And I can just imagine the look on his face when he gets an email from somebody he's never heard of asking such an obscure question. But maybe he'll get back to me, maybe he won't, but we'll see. Anywho, I really want to get it right, and I figure it's easier to put the thing on later, if it turns out I should have it, than try to take it off. So if you guys have any input on that, you let me know. Model builders. We are a nutty bunch sometimes. Then did a little bit of work on the tweet, and it's just about done, or ready for decals, I should say, not done. This 1/72 scale. Some of these tiny little lights and antennas I got to put on. I mean, we're talking goggles and tweezer territory, but I'd like it to look nice. And then finished off the El Camino. Got to be honest, not the greatest kit. It went together without really much argument. It did have trouble mounting, getting the bottom to adhere, but I finally got the frame to glue bond to the bottom of the car truck, whatever we're going to call it. And then what I was really disappointed was everything was in the right place. But that rear bumper is just abysmal. And I don't know why. And I've reread the instructions 4 times, made sure everything was where it's supposed to be. Just a gap like that. I thought maybe I'd left a piece off, but there's nothing shown in the instruction sheet. But anyway, I'm considering that done. It's ugly enough. And, bigger fish. Well, okay, guys, that's what I have for tonight. I'm sure we'll be talking about this at the live stream. And you take care of yourselves, and as always, model on.